Right, I think we should make a start at this point. A very warm welcome to you all to this special webinar, and we're going to hold a discussion over the next hour or so, looking particularly at the campaign to zero rate VAT for social care. We're going to look at why it is so important and crucially how all of you can get involved. There are many of you joining from all over the country, so you are very welcome. And I hope that this will be an hour well spent discussing something that is really vital to the industry. I'm Ben Thompson. Some of you, if you get up early enough, may know that I work for the BBC, particularly on BBC Breakfast, traveling around the country, meeting businesses and business leaders. And so I will be your guide through the next hour or so. We've assembled a great panel of speakers to talk about some of the key issues and highlight just what difference this change could make to them and to all of you too. Now, before we start properly, just a little explanation about how all of this is going to work. Quite clearly, you are on mute, your cameras are turned off, so please do sit back, relax, listen, watch, and hopefully learn a few things from this next session. We're going to record this too, and we will share a link with you. So if there's anything that you miss, you'll be able to watch it back. And if there are any bits that you particularly want to highlight, you can do that. I'm aware you are all very busy, so we will finish promptly at 5:45. We won't take too much of your time. But as I said, I hope it's an hour well spent with us this afternoon. There is an opportunity as well to ask questions. You'll notice on Zoom that there is a Q&A box, so please feel free to send in your questions and I will put them to the panel at the end of this session. I'm going to make sure we leave plenty of time for that. Do indicate if you can who that is intended for. There is many speakers, as you will see, lining up on the screen, and I will introduce those to you in just a second, but please indicate who your question is for. And there's also the opportunity on Zoom to uprate, as it's called. So if you see a question that's very similar to one that you want asking, make sure you click the thumbs up logo next to it and it will raise it to the top of the list, and it means it's more likely that I'll be able to spot it and ask it. So do upvote any questions that you particularly want answered. So let's get started. And as we said, the overall aim of today's session is to make social care services zero rated for VAT by the end of January, now at the end of the Brexit transition process. You may know, I'm sure you do, that goods and services provided by regulated social care providers are exempt from VAT. That means that you don't charge VAT on the services that you provide. However, all of the things that you need to run your businesses do incur VAT. You cannot claim that VAT back. And we're talking about all your operating expenses. So that might be, and particularly of late, things like PPE, but also gas, electricity, rent, repairs, and all the other business costs that you have. So what we've done, we've assembled a panel of some of the leading experts in the field, some of the biggest care home providers in the sector, and they will share their views on why this change is so badly needed, why the sector should be lobbying for this change, and crucially, as I said again, how you can help. So let me introduce the panel to you. You can hopefully see them on the screen. With us, Ken Deary, who is from Right at Home, Michelle Fenwick, who's from Heritage Healthcare, Lisa Fyfe from Caremark, Alex Green from Radfield Homecare, Martin Jones from Home Instead Senior Care, and Wayne Smith, who is from Bluebird Care, and also Yvonne Tomlinson from Kare Plus. And also with us is Diana Stevenson from Calvin Marketing. She will talk to us a little later about the communications plan, the marketing plan, to make people aware of this campaign. And so Ken, maybe I can start with you here, because let's lay out fundamentally why this is so important to the sector. What is the change you would like to see, and why this campaign is so necessary?
Obviously, then the change we want to see is to go to zero rated VAT for social care, not just home care. And this group came together about 3 months ago. We started talking with each other, and the togetherness of the founding group has been fantastic. And we've achieved some great momentum in just a few months. And hopefully today we'll build on that momentum. But I'd just like to point out a couple of key things. Firstly, zero rated VAT, because we can claim back the VAT on expenses, will benefit all providers in social care, not just the largest, it will benefit the smallest too, so it'll benefit everyone across the sector. And whilst the people on the call today are from the home care sector, what I would point out is that zero-rated VAT is going to benefit everyone in social care, be they care homes, be they extra care, be they supported living. So hopefully we'll get the whole of social care behind the campaign. But let's talk mainly about home care. You know, for a long time, we've been a silent partner supporting healthcare. You know, and what we've seen is exponential growth of the elderly, and with their support needs. Without home care, you know, the hospitals just couldn't have coped, and particularly during the pandemic. You know, our businesses, your businesses, have kept clients at home, and at home with extremely low transmission rates. You know, let's not forget the low transmission rates. And that's freed up hospital beds at a time when the country most needed those hospital beds. And I guess the last point I want to make is that if there's been one positive out of the pandemic, particularly for our sector, there's never before as social care, and particularly home care, and our fantastic staff took such prominence and being recognised for the work they do.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, so fundamental, that care that was provided. And as you said, that meant that so many more resources were available where they were needed, weren't they? Martin, let me bring you in here as well, because you'll have heard there what Ken said. And it really does strike me that in all of this, change is so fundamentally needed, because that would make a huge difference to future-proof the industry entirely.
I think you're right. I think this is an opportunity which we can't turn away. You know, we got together as a group of providers to start to talk about this change for VAT. And, you know, we're talking about care at home at the moment, but Ken's right, it is for the whole of social care that we're talking about, this zero rated for VAT. But for home care particularly, what COVID has done, and it's been a really tough struggle over the last few months, but it's put home care right at the front and the forefront of to make it the default care norm in the UK. And also it's really taken the burden off the NHS, because even before COVID-19, there isn't enough bricks and mortar to cope with the age wave that's coming towards us in the UK. We talk about the age wave a lot. You talk a lot about it on BBC Breakfast, I've heard you. And there's a place for residential, but there's certainly a place for home care. And what this change would do would be further investment in care at home, which is where people want to be. And it really then can provide a support to the NHS in terms of, you know, they are always overstretched, they're always at capacity, and care in the community is going to get bigger and more important and more needed as we have this aging population and as we go through all the winter months. So, you know, this change, if we could force through this change with the momentum we've got, as Ken said, we could start to see and make a real difference, not just for our clients, but also for the carers that we have right around the UK.
Lisa, let's bring you in at this point as well, because I want to talk about the numbers themselves, because that is what it boils down to, isn't it? And I know you've been doing some number crunching on what difference this could make. You've worked out the VAT costs to the home care sector as a whole. Just give me a sense of those numbers, if you would, please.
Yeah, so we've had a look into what we believe the VAT cost is for the domiciliary care market each year. And we believe it's in excess of 40 million. And that is excluding any VAT that would be paid on royalties for those operating in a franchise business. So just the care side, we expect it to be more than 40 million a year. And that's based on an estimation of 6.5 million hours of care being delivered a week. And we anticipate that the VAT cost is around about 12p an hour for an established business. And we've looked at actual data from real established businesses to obtain that information. If you take a business operating about 3,000 to 4,000 hours of care a week, we anticipate that the VAT cost is about 20,000 a year. So it's quite a considerable amount of money that could be reinvested elsewhere.
Yeah, and we're going to come on to where that money might be reinvested just a little later as well, because that's clearly what a lot of people will want to know, is how that money can be better used to improve that service. But let's talk about how that might work in practice, Lisa, if you will. How would that new regime actually work? What would people need to do?
Okay, so we believe there could be two options. One would be accounting for VAT under normal accounting rules. So your supplier will invoice you with VAT and you'll pay for that. You'll keep a record of all your invoices, and then once a quarter you'll complete a VAT return, and then you'll claim back any VAT that you've paid. And you'll do that once a quarter, and you'll receive that money in arrears from HMRC. Or alternatively, we see there could be an option to operate similar to how a disabled individual would provide a VAT exemption certificate to a supplier, and therefore no VAT is charged. So it could be that social care providers have a certificate which they provide to a supplier, which enables the supplier not to charge VAT, which saves the admin burden for social care providers. It saves the admin burden for HMRC having to submit, having to process all of these. And it also means that providers get relief immediately. They're not having to pay out the money for the VAT and then claim it back in arrears.
I'm sure there will be questions about that as well, so we'll come back to you on that a little later, Lisa. Wayne, let me bring you in at this point, because you'll have heard there from what Lisa and Ken and Martin were laying out some of the issues. Talk to me about why the sector is different. There are very specific risks, there are very specific demands on the sector that would mean that this money would be really well used and particularly relevant if this change could be enforced.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure as everyone appreciates on the call, we operate in a very highly regulated sector. There are lots of associated costs with running a business like ours, which are often not given full consideration. Things like regulatory fees, investments in staff training, PPE, mileage, then all kinds of back office functions around, payroll, IT, and all that kind of stuff. So even before the pandemic hit, the sector was facing increased financial pressures, for example, on things like national living wage increases, the increasing cost of pension provision, recruitment, and insurance, which is likely to increase significantly, given the sense that this sector is going to be viewed as more risky going forward. We're having to invest in IT to help us work in new ways, like remote working or changing the way we do visits, for example. And we've seen our PPE costs increase substantially, both in terms of the volume that we use, but also the price we're paying. Often, we've seen prices and volumes quadrupling compared to what we were doing pre-pandemic. And whilst that has dropped off a little bit since that, we're still seeing elevated levels compared to where we were pre-COVID. And all these factors make it very difficult for home care for providers to remain viable and concentrate on the thing that we're here to do, which is to provide excellent quality care. And so margins were incredibly tight before the pandemic, and now even more so, which makes investment very difficult, if not impossible.
Yeah, and that investment question a real issue, isn't it? Because as we know, the demand and the pressure on the sector will only get worse. Michelle, let me talk about local authorities, because I know that some of the people on the call, some, not all, deliver care under contracts to local authorities, don't they? And we know, as we heard there, about budget pressures. Those budget pressures inevitably cause another layer of complexity and concern, don't they?
Yes, they do, Ben. And local authority hourly rates paid to providers for home care have at best remained static and at worst reduced over recent years. Because of severe funding cuts, the local government budgets, councils have had to squeeze their payments to home care companies, and in connection to this, obviously reduce services. Many contracts that home care companies bid for via tendering with the local authorities are scored on an 80% price and 20% quality basis. So the lowest hourly rates produced on those contracts will obviously score the most and potentially win or be first within the contact list. The system then has a knock-on effect on the rates of pay for our home carers. So while this situation continues, then no real improvement can be achieved. Within our business, we have a contract in place at the moment with a local authority that shamefully only pays £14.97 per hour. So UKHCA's minimum price for home care services is £20.69 per hour from April 2020, and that allows full compliance with National Living Wage and the delivery of sustainable home care services to local authorities and the NHS. So you can see then that the rates that are being forced on us to accept are not sustainable for this sector.
Yeah, it's astonishing, isn't it, when you lay it out like that with those numbers and you really get a sense of just what pressure the sector is under. Yvonne, let me talk to you here, because let's assume that the rules are changed, that there is a significant shift in thinking on VAT. It would, as we've heard, save a significant amount of money. Give me a sense of where that money would be used. How could you reinvest that money?
Yeah, so we'd be thinking about things like recruitment and staff retention as one of the things. So with regards to recruitment, we all know that COVID-19, it's really helped us. It's put social care in the spotlight. It's saved us hundreds and thousands of pounds on recruitment campaigns. As a business, we've actually been inundated with applicants, and therefore it's enabled us to recruit without the normal associated costs. But if you go back pre-COVID-19 and what will potentially happen in the future, as a sector, it's going to be difficult to recruit. Recruitment does cost us money. It costs us money in time, sifting through applications, the interviewing. We've all got dropout rates. So for example, Tesco comes along, they pay £1 an hour more. They can start tomorrow. So we've done all that work and off that person goes. And all because we were waiting for a reference to come back, for example. Advertising, social media, job pages, they're all subject to price increases. This has an effect on what we can and can't do. Everything I've mentioned are all what I see as unseen costs. As providers, we'd all love to be able to invest in campaigns that proactively reinforce the image of care. As part of the recruitment, we're also having to educate people about what a rewarding career working in care can be. We do that at no charge, both in and out of working hours. I've spent time myself in colleges, in job centres, at job fairs, talking to people, telling them what care is about. So that's, you know, that's the recruitment side of it. If we then went on to the retention, with regards to investing into retention, we struggle to compete with the NHS or the local authority. The blue light card scheme, that's something again that local authority, NHS providers are aware of. There's a cost to that. It's a cost of £4.99 per individual. We'd love to be able to put money back into things like that. Continuing professional development. We're constantly waiting for funding to be available so that we can offer this to individuals. Specialised training, bringing outside resources into the business is costly. And if we're honest about this, the majority of providers will look at the cost of training before they consider the quality of the training. And it should always be the other way around. Providers have to continually think about innovative ways that in the majority of cases come at minimal to no cost.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Yvonne, there's so many questions I have about that actually, and we'll come to those a little later. And just a reminder to the 155 of you that are listening into this, do keep your questions and your comments coming in. You may see on your Zoom screen, there is the opportunity to type in a question or to upvote a question that's already been submitted. We're going to leave plenty of time for those questions at the end when we've heard from all of the speakers. So please do submit your questions and I'll make sure that they get answered, because it's such a complex issue, but one hopefully we can shed a little bit of light on over the next half hour or so. Yvonne, thank you. We'll come back to you in just a second, but Alex, let me bring you in here, because we heard there about some of the savings, some of the places that money may be able to be reinvested. What does it allow you, or what would it allow you to do that you can't currently provide given the budget constraints?
I think one area where we see additional investment having a big impact on our work is through an increased use of technology. So bringing in any technology solution will have significant costs, whether that's the platform itself or training and education for staff and clients using the technology systems. And I think at the moment the investment is probably beyond the reach of many social care providers, and yet we see at the same time the regulator is moving towards incorporating use of technology as part of their ratings to get to outstanding ratings going ahead. In the last few years, we've seen certain solutions mature to the point where they can now have a significant impact on outcomes for clients. For example, in recent years, we've seen a move away from using paper records to using electronic care management systems. So a simple impact of that is that instead of a medication record being retained in a client's home or paper, checked intermittently, we would now have immediate alerts if medication isn't given. And that obviously greatly improves safety for clients. Another benefit of these types of systems is the large-scale collection of anonymous data, and the sharing of that data with organisations like the NHS or Public Health England can provide data sets that support research and funding, can also help to track large-scale health impacts such as COVID. So if more of the smaller independent providers have access to these systems, which can be quite expensive, you will see improved care for clients and improved data collection. So newer technologies that are coming through that have a significant impact would be passive in-home monitoring systems, where you would use a series of sensors, biometric sensors, environmental and motion sensors, that monitor the pattern of behaviour for a client, and then would alert care providers or family members to a critical incident such as a fall. But they also build up a pattern of regular behaviour, and then those systems would spot any changes to that regular pattern. So in a passive sense, those systems are keeping an eye on someone, and they can spot signs of deterioration or potentially spot health conditions that come along. What those do for the clients is they offer reassurance, they can improve longer term health and well-being, and an early use of systems can sort of initially reduce the need for carers to be visiting a client. When you bring those systems into sort of partnership with a care provider, the monitoring of those platforms can help providers to tailor and adapt their support to the clients as the needs change. They can certainly drive through efficiencies in the cost of providing care to clients. But one example of an immediate impact would be, for example, the detection and management of health conditions, those that cause the greatest number of emergency admissions to hospitals in the UK. So conditions such as urine infections can be detected at an early stage by these passive monitoring systems. Reduced mobility and other changes can be identified to indicate a problem arising at an early stage, and identification of a UTI at that stage can allow early treatment that will potentially prevent hospitalisation down the line if the condition were to get more severe. Avoiding hospitalisation is clearly in the client's best interest, and treating the condition at an early stage prevents discomfort and in some cases can save lives. And then you track that through onto the potential impact on the NHS from reducing hospitalisations. And that's where you see probably the most significant overall impact. But based on figures from 2015 through to 2017, if we can reduce the number of emergency admissions in the over 65s, not from care homes, but in the wider population by just 20% through the increased use of monitoring technology, we could be looking at saving around £1 million a day. And then if you also apply the technology to support discharging people from hospitals, it will then make it less likely that a client will be readmitted to hospital, again, providing savings for the NHS. And there are other sort of technologies coming down the line, a little bit less mature maybe, but the use of robotic mobility aids where a carer would wear an exoskeleton sounds like the future, but we are already seeing pilots being driven through in the UK now, and it's fairly widespread in use in Japan. But what that can do for a client is that, a carer wearing one of these exoskeletons could potentially be moving and handling with the client on their own, whereas normally you might need to have two carers, so there's a direct cost saving, preventing the use of hoists or other equipment that the client may not find particularly good. So you see an improvement in the outcome for the client, an improvement in the outcome for the carer, and potentially some cost savings as well. But I think the key issue is the costs, because to bring any of these systems in, you need to be investing, and some of them, certainly the robotics end of things, obviously have very significant costs attached to them. There is the promise to improve the care experience for the clients, to improve the experience for the carers, but with those costs at the moment, it is probably prohibitive. So a reduction in the charges of that would certainly enable greater investment in technology, and that could ultimately drive through cost savings nationally for the NHS and potentially provide better services for all of our clients.
Yeah, when you lay it out like that, the potential gain of all of this is absolutely huge, isn't it? I have a couple of questions, and I know some of the people listening in will have questions too about, you know, some of the expense of that. So we'll talk about that in just a second. Ken, let me bring you back in here, because inevitably what will happen is that people will say, great, you saved this money, you saved the VAT money, but the firms will just hang on to it. Business is there to make money, really. That's clearly one of the perceptions. But as we've heard, that money will be well spent, will it not?
Yeah, I mean, this is a subject I'm absolutely passionate about, Ben. I don't think it's fair to say people hang on to the money. You know, this sector is made up mainly of small providers, SME providers. There are some large providers in the sector, but whenever I've spoke to them, they're working on tight margins that Michelle talked about earlier, and they're always looking to reinvest in the staff and the client experience. But let's concentrate on what this sector is mainly made up of. That is small, privately owned businesses who operate to very tight margins. And certainly all the speakers today operate franchise models where each of our franchisees are SME business owners in their own right. And in terms of those SME owners, I mean, I can speak from experience, having started my own home care business approximately 10 years ago. I know firsthand the personal sacrifices that these owners make in the early years. Borrowing from the bank, putting their house on the line when they borrow from the bank, using up the savings, all the personal savings to set up the companies, not being able to pay themselves a decent wage in the early years, certainly not as much as they pay their senior staff. And it takes a lot of sweat and time to become profitable. Certainly this is not a get-me-rich-quick scheme. However, you know, most of the SMEs in this sector aren't here just for the money. They want to invest back in the staff and in the local community. I feel virtually all of them here are here to make a difference in the local community.
Yeah, well said, Ken. Let's talk to Martin, though. Final word from you, Martin, if I can, because look, let's talk about some of the logistics, and we're going to talk about how the campaign might work. And you touched as well on the COVID crisis and the pressure that that's put on the system. This is an even more pressing issue now, isn't it? Given everything that's gone on over the last 4 months, how does it play out from here, in your view?
Yeah, I think, thanks, Ben. I think, as I said before, you know, we've got an opportunity here, and we need to seize it. In terms of, you know, we're talking about VAT, and we're talking about, you know, Lisa mentioned £40 million saving for the sector we could reinvest. You've heard about we can reinvest in technology, in the community, and in our people and our resources. Now we can really help and support, you know, readmissions to hospitals and, you know, our communities at large, and older people stay in their own homes as well, which is absolutely vital. You know, COVID-19 shone a light on our sector like never before, in the sense of we've been applauding for our carers around the country every Thursday. And it's really shone a light in terms of the general public, the awareness of what home care and the wider social care can play to support people in the community. And that's never been done before. We've heard that, and it's right that, you know, we are the poor relation of the NHS. You know, so £40 million in the context of the billions that's invested in the NHS is very, very little, but can make a huge difference in the support we could give the communities that we serve. So that's why, as a body of people, we got together. That's why, as a wider body of people, we can get together and create a movement on this zero-rated VAT and really start to push it forward and influence the people in government to make that change so we can reinvest. It's not going to go in our back pocket. It is going to go in investment in our people and our resources to provide a better quality of service to our clients and the people we serve. So to this end, Diana's now going to show us what that campaign could look like moving forward and what the next steps are going to be, so everyone who's really logged on today can really get behind it and get involved.
Thanks, Martin. Thank you. Great to see so many people logged on today. And I have to say, before I get into the campaign moving forwards, a huge thank you to Pip Wilkins at the BFA and her team, and also to Jane Townsend and Andrew Heffernan at the UKHCA, who've got behind the campaign, got behind the consortium of founders, and have shared details of today's webinar to help us get as many providers on today's call and made aware of the campaign moving forward. So big thank you to them. In terms of the campaign, we're looking at a multifaceted campaign to hit the media. So Ben, pin your ears back, because we'll be knocking on the door of BBC Breakfast about this one for sure. But what we're looking at is there's going to be press releases going out starting tomorrow to the Care Press, next week to the franchise media, and also to the national media. So we'll be starting with a launch press release next week to the nationals, but that will be followed up during the campaign with different messages. The other thing we'll be doing is letters to the editor. So we're sort of pitching, we will be pitching to the likes of the Times and the Telegraph with a letter about the topic from the founders. So for a letter to the editor to land, it's best to peg it onto a news story that's run in the paper. So we'll be scouring the news over the weekend and early next week and finding a hook that we can introduce this topic of discussion on. You've got there under the word blog, you've got like a cute little set of cartoon images where we've produced so far 2 animated films which are explaining the campaign. So the films will, they're explainer videos, if you like, explain the background to the campaign, why this is so important. So taking elements from today's webinar, but really driving home the message that what we're looking to do ultimately is, as everybody said today, improve the client experience and improve the caregiver experience, and what we can give back to them. So we've got a series of films going out. If I jump up, then we've got blogs. So anybody who's on the call today, please get in touch with me if you've got an idea for a blog. The founders have already committed to sharing blogs on different topics, and that will be ongoing through until the end of the year. You've then got they've got a cute picture of Ken and Martin. We have already recorded a number of vlogs to support the campaign. Again, just reiterating some of the messaging that we've heard on today's call. We've got a Twitter account, so please hop over to Twitter at @0VAT Social Care and follow the Twitter feed, and you'll be able to get the latest updates on there. We've also set up a group called the Homecare Hub on LinkedIn. And the idea for this hub is that it will be a place for home care providers to have a discussion and talk about not just the VAT campaign, but perhaps other collaborations that you may work on moving forwards. We've got their House of Commons. That's when you've written to the MP and your MP writes back to you to say, what a great idea, I'll take this to the Treasury. So we'll be producing templated letters that you can send out to people of influence and your local MP. So again, we really want you to get on board with that. There'll be a series of infographics trying to explain the finances and where the savings might be spent, that sort of thing. And we're also going to be mounting a petition. I think that covers everything. So what will happen after the webinar today is, as an attendee, you'll receive an email tomorrow, I think, and that will basically allow you to opt out if you don't want to receive further emails. But basically, we will then be communicating with you, sharing templates for the letters, for example, and it allows you to get back in touch with us if you've got something that you'd like to comment on or share about the campaign. But I think the message is we're going to be doing an awful lot as the group of founders, but the more of you that can help and participate, share the social media, like and comment the, you know, what's going on Twitter, get involved on the LinkedIn page. Oh, we're also going to have a YouTube channel. We've got a YouTube channel as well, and the vlogs will be posted on there. So there'll be lots of activity. And as you know, in today's digital world, the more you participate, the better. Thank you very much.
Diana, thank you so much. I mean, it's really fascinating when you see it all, you know, together like that, and it clearly lays out how much work there is to do, but that coordinated strategy, a joined up strategy and everyone getting behind it might make a huge difference. Now, as promised, there are so many questions, and I've got a lot of questions that I want to follow up with the speakers that we've heard from today. So let me welcome them all back. So Ken, Michelle, Lisa, Alex, Martin, Wayne and Yvonne. Let's jump straight into some of these questions. And it may be that many of these are applicable to all of you, so feel free to jump in. But let's start with that question from Tim, and he says, and I think perhaps this is one for you, Lisa. Is it worth companies starting to account for VAT on purchases in their account systems now, so that if the rules change retrospectively, that the numbers are available immediately? Would that be helpful?
My personal view is that I don't see it being backdated, and I think it would probably come into place after we've left Brexit. But that's saying, you know, it doesn't do any harm. You're not going to lose anything if when you're recording your supplier invoices, you do record the VAT as well. I don't see it being backdated, but, you know, it's not going to take any more of your time to record the VAT element as you enter an invoice into your accounting software.
There's also a great question that, again, is probably relevant to you, Lisa. Does anyone on the panel know why social care was categorised by the HMRC as exempt rather than zero rated in the first place? James is suggesting that might help us understand the need to change the decision. What is the thinking behind it?
So I didn't know the answer to this question, but I have seen that Roger has responded in that it was designed so that to save, obviously, you know, the service user, the VAT element, but they didn't think, obviously, at the time about the effect of the expenses. I've seen Roger's detailed kind of response here in the replies. Just bear with me. Apparently, it was standard rated up until the turn of the century, and the introduction of exemption was due to an initiative from then CEO of the UKHCA to reduce the cost of private service users. The organisation seemingly failed to realise the cost to its members of losing the recovery of input VAT. So yeah, there's a detailed answer in there.
Thank you, and people will be able to click on through to that if they want to read that. Maybe one for you here, Martin, because you talked there about, you know, the importance of this for future-proofing the industry. Neil says one of the things that the COVID-19 crisis highlighted is the fantastic contribution that home care workers have made to society and continue to make on a day-to-day basis, whilst in many cases being paid the minimum wage that don't reflect their true value. So a zero rating could be a unique opportunity to address that injustice and pay care workers a realistic wage that reflects their contribution and dedication. I think that's probably something that everybody on this webinar would agree with. Yeah,
I think they probably would, and I think it's a great point that's been made. And it's not just the wage side of it as well. You know, I think it was mentioned early on, we could also invest a lot more in training as well. And support and in terms of the recruitment side, but certainly that wage in terms of making it better than the NHS or better than the public sector, and really making it an attractive place to come and work, because as I said, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. We've talked about before that, you know, unfortunately some of the other sectors are leisure, hospitality, retail are struggling. More and more people are going to come to social care, so they need to pay a great wage, have some great training and make it a very, very attractive place to be. And this is a great opportunity to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Martin, thank you. Let me get to the question from Mark. He says, what is to stop councils using the potential VAT saving to reduce or hold rates in the future? He says social care funding needs fixing. Lisa, I think that's probably one for you, or perhaps Michelle, because Michelle, you talked about local authority contracts and those really tight margins.
Yeah, definitely, Ben. And also the local authority rates vary across the country. Some local authority rates are very fair, Ben, so I will like to point that out, but they do vary across the country. And what we would like is for local authorities to have a realistic and reasonable set rate for home care, the same way that we have imposed on us minimum wage for staff. You know, we would like the councils to also be assessed and to have a set rate that's fair for home care. But as I said, it is varied across the country, and we would hope that if we can get this zero rated VAT through, that then obviously there's money there that we can make savings and we can reinvest back into our staff and our services, and the local authorities then will continue to pay the rates that they're paying, but we will be slightly better off as a business to be more sustainable.
Yeah, Michelle, thank you. Yvonne, let me bring you in at this point, because as we heard there from Michelle about reinvesting in staff, you were talking about that need to continually invest in training, and that might be where some of that money can be spent. Andrew says every year providers are expected to take on more and more healthcare responsibilities, but at no time are any of those costed in terms of pay and training costs. That's a real concern for the industry, isn't it?
It is, and Andrew's completely right. Every year our standards, we're expected to raise our standards, and so we should, but that comes at a cost to the business. So we have to be able to give that commitment that we can, you know, we can put that back into our carers, who then put that back into the service that they provide to our clients, to our customers. So yeah, Andrew's completely right there. It is costly. But we have to make sure that we're using the correct training providers, that we have our staff trained adequately above standards to be able to do all that.
Thanks for that. Yeah, Ken, let me bring you in on this question. This is from Ivan, and he says, when campaigning to ask the government to cut this, essentially what you're asking the government to do is cut their revenues by zero rating VAT. Would it not be more compelling to focus on how those refunds or the zero rating could improve the quality of the care provided? So therefore, what Ivan is suggesting is focus on the positive issues here rather than really talking about the negatives about budget constraints and low levels of funding.
Yeah, I do feel that the speakers here today pointed that out, that really what we're trying to do is ensure we have enough margin, because you cannot pay for things like training, better rates of pay. You've got to get it from somewhere, and at the moment the margins are really tight in home care. So if we get the VAT, what we're saying, we will be reinvesting that back in our staff and our clients' well-being. But I mean, we do need to point out what the issue is, but the real positive is that everyone wants to put the money back into staffing and our client well-being.
Yeah, a quick question as well on devolution, if you would. This is a question from Nick, and maybe Ken, you could take this one. He said, presumably the campaign is UK-wide, so it would also be inclusive of devolved nations, so in Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland.
Absolutely, we'd hope all nations would join in this. We do have to wait till the 1st of January to actually come out of the EEC, because our VAT regime is regulated to a large extent by the EEC. So once we come out, we can actually all become zero rated from that date, and we would hope that will be common across all of the countries in the UK.
Fab, Ken, thank you. Martin, one for you. Guy is asking, it's Guy Kirk at Home Instead, Northumberland. He says a figure of £20,000, that VAT saving has been talked about, that would be per office. Have you thought about where perhaps that could be reinvested? What would you do with that level of funding?
Yeah, I was looking at this in preparation for this conversation in terms of what could an office do with this amount of money. And you know, you could train additional 20 caregivers on dementia training, 15 and end of life. You could purchase a razor chair, which just helps older people get off the ground when they fell over. 20 tablet devices for clients in the community, maybe a mobility scooter, and actually invest the rest in terms of benefits for the caregiver population. So there's so much there that each office can do to benefit, you know, the clients and the caregivers. And it comes back to what Michelle and Ken have been saying. It's about reinvestment. And that's what, and then we have got this window of opportunity to do this.
Thanks for that. Alex, I want to bring you in at this point because I know you talked a lot about the technology elements there as well. And there's a few questions about that. Howard says, how would this impact home care providers investing in technology to improve care quality and efficiencies? And I suppose, and the case you laid out is all of these great things that would be wonderful to have. Many people listening to this will think it sounds like a lot of money up front and the payback only comes further down the line.
Yeah, and I think some of the platforms are affordable with some additional investment that would be freed up by reducing the rates of VAT. I think what you need to focus on is the role of home care alongside the NHS, and that's something that's not talked about necessarily enough. Whereas, you know, if we look after people at home, it prevents them going into hospital. It reduces all of those winter pressures. You know, we're a key player in this that is often forgotten. And I think, and also then where I was talking about the data sets, the data that we as a sector collect is massive. You know, we're looking after, you know, a huge number of people at home, you know, that aren't in residential care. And that data is absolutely valuable to the NHS. And then where I was talking around the savings, I mean, you know, you're talking about what the direct savings would be. The impact on an NHS budget dwarfs £40 million. You know, potentially with a clever use of this technology, and the NHS are working on this at the moment. They're working on how to use this data. You know, the UK HCA hosted a call recently where the NHS were presenting how they actually look to providers like us to share data with them and what the formats will be going ahead, and looking at how technology will impact home care going ahead into the future. So I think, you know, seeing us as a vital part of the infrastructure, working alongside the NHS, you know, the regime should be fair for us as it is for the NHS. We should be seen as an extension of that critical service in the country.
Alex, thank you. Yvonne, let's talk about that training issue again, because I was really taken by the fact that you point out that the COVID crisis, actually, if anything, clearly raising the profile and recognising the importance of this sector and the work that it does, but also actually helping in terms of job retention. Do you have a fear, does the industry have a fear that when this, we hope at some point, does go away, that then that suddenly becomes a stark reality again, that things just revert back to how they were?
I can't answer that one, let's be honest about it. It's from, if I think about it personally, I think, yeah, I think there is that potential because people revert back to type. So yeah, we'd like to retain a lot of those that have come across at this time, but I think we will struggle once the country starts to move forward again, but we don't know when that's going to be, and opportunities arise. People will move back out of the care industry again, but at this moment in time, it's one of those unknown and a finger in the air question, I think. Answer, sorry. Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right, because there are so many unpredictable things. Martin, please, jump in.
Yeah, I would just like to say, I think it's important, you know, as I say, I think this is our opportunity to start a different conversation, start a conversation about care. And we've talked about, you know, Alex mentioned about the integral part with the NHS. I think that's absolutely key critical. I think VAT is just a start in terms of what we can start to talk about, and we don't want to lose the momentum that we've seized in terms of how we're perceived in the public perception. I think, you know, we need to keep on pushing the social care to the front of the agenda. We need to push in home care to the front of the agenda in terms of where people want to be long term. And I think it's down to us in the sector to do that. And I think, as I say, this is our time, and I think, as I say, VAT could be the start of something special on that in terms of what we use that money for. Ken, did you want to?
Yeah, thanks, Martin. If I could add to that, Ben, you know, at the moment we're finding it easier to bring staff on because of all the issues in the economy. I think most economic commentators say it's going to take time to actually get the economy back to where it was. So we've got a few years really where we can really reduce the attrition rates with our caregivers by providing the best training, by providing the best possible pay we can. But we need things like the VAT to be able to invest in our caregivers. And I do believe that if we take this window of opportunity that Martin's said then, we can actually reduce the attrition rates coming out of home care, and all the people will not go back to hospitality, etc. They'll see what a great job this is in home care.
Yeah, Michelle, I want to talk to you about local authorities as well, because there's a number of questions. Matthew's saying, look, if this does go through, won't the local authorities just use this as an excuse to lower their rates? Another one suggesting, what's to stop councils using it to reduce or hold rates in future? Are you confident that that won't happen?
Well, to be honest, Ben, that's happening now without this. So, as I said before, local authorities, have reduced their rates prior to this, prior to the pandemic. Local authorities, some pay well, some don't. But, sometimes we're held to ransom, Ben, with the local authorities, because we need the work, we need the hours to be able to keep the carers that we've invested in and that we've paid to employ and to be brought in, and we're held to ransom. If we can get our businesses to be more viable and we can get better training for our staff and provide better services, then we can concentrate on private markets as well, so we're not held to ransom by the local authority. The local authority do need us as care companies, but the local authorities need to accept that there needs to be a better rate paid in the majority of the local authorities across the country. So yes, they may try to do that, but I think as a group we need to, and certainly with the support of UKHCA, we need to name and shame those local authorities for doing that, and we need to highlight that to central government that that's happening.
Are you confident that the response you will get will be favourable? Because a lot of people here saying, look, is there a response from the Chancellor? We're asking the government here to forfeit quite a lot of money. Do you expect that this will be a negotiation that they recognise and are happy to come on board with? Maybe it's a question for Ken or Martin.
Yeah, I think if you look at it, what we're talking about, the amount of money for the Chancellor is minimal. Look at the kind of money they're spending at the moment, and we're talking 40 million, I think Lisa said. If it's say 100 million for the whole of social care, let's be honest, that's a drop in the ocean compared to the budgets of the government. But the impact on individual providers will be huge. 20,000 to an individual provider to provide extra training, extra pay for staff is huge. Sorry, Martin, do you want to comment?
I was just going to, that's a great point, Ken. I was just going to add to that, Camilla Cavendish has been brought back in. She was part of David Cameron's policy unit on social care. She's been brought back in to help the present Prime Minister in terms of how we push social care agenda going forward. So if we can use this, and we are, and I know UKHA are talking about that to Camilla, as are Care England, about zero-rated VAT, as a mechanism to actually push more funding back into social care. It can be part of the government's grand plan and how they can start to fix social care, because this is just one tiny element. And as Ken said, it is a drop in the ocean for the Treasury in terms of the billions that furloughs cost. So this is just one tiny element of how we can help and support social care in terms to go forward onto the next wave, into the next decade. And I think that's why there's a lot of opportunities here in terms of coming out of the EU, the policy units and the think tanks thought about social care. That's why time's just so key now, and that's why we got together.
And let's face it, one of the big things is in the background is that one of the big
go ahead, Ken, and I'll bring in Wayne in just a second. That's absolutely fine.
Yeah. One of the big things that the government is saying is they've got to fix social care, and this could be a significant element in helping to fix the social care issue.
Wayne, do you want to jump in as well on that?
No, I think all the points have been excellent. But I think I just add, I think now is the time. I think it is the perfect opportunity in terms of less regulation from the EU in terms of ability to the government to change the policy, and equally the public perception and prominence that we have of care at the minute with the pandemic and Clap for Carers and all the other good stuff, which has made our sector so much more visible. Now is the time to get this to happen.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. One of the questions or comments there is every one of us should have the tagline, says Anonymous, it's not enough to clap for carers, we should pay more than the living wage. VAT zero rated will help us do that. I mean, does it strike you, Wayne, that this is the moment that you have the attention, you have the eyeballs, you have the respect and the appreciation of the country, this is a good time to do this.
Yeah, if you'd spoken to me 6 months or so ago and said, you know, every Thursday night you're going to get people stood outside of their front doors clapping for people in our sector, I'd have said you've been smoking something very interesting, and you know, and you just wouldn't believe, you wouldn't have been able to predict this. And I think it just, so many things have happened over the last 6 months, which has just brought, you know, the great work that the people on this call and their teams do. That now's the time to get the proper recognition for it, because we operate with our hands tied behind our back to be able to do the things that we want to do and the right things we want to do for all the good reasons that people have talked about on this call. And so, like I say, now's the time.
I'm really grateful to you all for answering all those questions, and of course for everybody who's on this call submitting those questions. Diana, I know there are a couple of questions for you in terms of sharing the slides and talking about that coordinated strategy. I'm aware too you're going to share all of the details after this call with people who have joined, if they all look out for an email that will come not only with a recording of today's session, so if there's anything they want to go back and have a look at, but also about how crucially they can all get involved. And I'm aware too that you made particular thanks, special thanks to Pip Wilkins, who's at the BFA, and Jane Towson, who's at UK HCA, both of whom are supporting this campaign. So our thanks to them. Thank you too to the panel who have valiantly answered all those questions, because we didn't know what we were going to get, but it's fascinating to be able to hear so many thoughts on it. So my thanks to Ken, to Michelle, to Lisa, to Alex, to Martin, to Wayne, and Yvonne too. Really grateful for your time this afternoon. I really hope it's been a helpful hour or so about how you can get involved in this campaign. Throw your weight behind it, get involved, write those letters, and spread the word, because by doing so, hopefully some change will come out of all of this. So my thanks once again. Look out for that email that will be sent through to you. Have a lovely evening, and I'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.